Maya Collins had never imagined that an ordinary Thursday would turn into a story she would retell for the rest of her life. She was tired, overworked, and slightly annoyed at the universe for forcing her onto Flight 14A. A last-minute meeting had dragged her into the city earlier than expected, and traffic had made her sprint to the airport like a frantic marathoner. She had barely made it through security, her laptop bag swinging heavily from one shoulder, headphones tangled in her hair, and a cup of coffee clutched in her other hand. Settling into seat 14A, she tried to calm her nerves. The hum of the plane's engines beneath her feet, the faint chatter of passengers around her, and the occasional squeak of rolling luggage should have been comforting. Instead, a strange sense of unease gnawed at her chest. She tried to focus on a podcast, but the words blurred together. Something felt off. She couldn't explain it. Maya glanced at the cockpit. The pilots waved briefly before diving into their routine checks. She noticed the older pilot's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the throttle. Shrugging it off as pre-flight jitters, she returned her gaze to the cabin, watching a mother soothe a crying toddler across the aisle, a businessman tapping frantically on his laptop, a teenager with earbuds jamming to music oblivious to the world. Life seemed ordinary, almost painfully mundane, and yet Maya felt an invisible tension hanging in the air, an intangible warning that something extraordinary was about to happen. Then the plane jerked slightly as it taxied down the runway. The familiar vibration under her seat should have been reassuring, but it was. A subtle, unshakable dread coiled around her stomach. She caught the eye of the flight attendant, who gave a polite, practiced smile, but Maya noticed the faint furrow between her brows. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to prick her growing anxiety. The plane lifted into the sky, smooth at first, the clouds spreading below like a cotton canvas. Passengers relaxed, some taking photos, others closing their eyes for a nap. Maya tried to do the same. She tried to calm her racing heart, telling herself that she was overthinking, that her imagination had always loved dramatic catastrophes, especially those involving airplanes. And then it happened. A sharp, metallic clank echoed from the cockpit, followed by a sudden silence. At first, Maya assumed it was routine, some harmless adjustment, but when the intercom crackled, her blood ran cold. The pilot's voice, strained and trembling, came through, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing," and then it cut out abruptly, leaving an unsettling static in its place. The cabin's chatter froze. The passengers' heads turned toward the cockpit, confusion giving way to fear. The co-pilot didn't respond. There was no routine reassurance, only silence. Then Maya noticed something that made her heart pound so violently it felt as if it might burst. Both pilots were slumped over their controls, their bodies motionless, heads dipping unnaturally forward. A scream rose from the row behind her. Maya's hands gripped the armrests as panic set in. Oh my God! Oh my God! Her mind spun, searching for a way out, a solution, a miracle. She wasn't a pilot. She didn't even know the basics of flying a plane. But instinct slammed into her like a tidal wave. She needed to take control or everyone would die. And then it came. The sound was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, a faint, resonant echo, metallic yet strangely warm. It seemed to come from the radio, but not from any channel she recognized. The words were clear, calm, almost soothing in their precision. Call sign 14A acknowledged. Maya froze. Her brain struggled to process the message. It wasn't a human voice, or at least it didn't sound entirely human. There was a rhythm to it, an authority that demanded attention yet offered guidance. It was as if someone or something had been waiting silently for this exact moment. She blinked, unsure if her ears were deceiving her, and glanced around. Passengers were panicking, some shouting, others crying, some clinging to strangers with desperate grips. The flight attendants were frozen in disbelief. A man near the emergency exit shouted, "Is anyone flying this thing?" His words hung in the air, unanswered. Maya's chest tightened. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, loud enough to drown out everything else. Her gaze returned to the cockpit. The controls were dizzying, switches, buttons, levers, gauges, lights flashing red and yellow in alarming sequences. Every warning light screamed danger. The plane lurched as turbulence hit, tossing drinks and small bags across the cabin. Maya gritted her teeth, forcing herself to focus, her hands hovering near the yoke. Her mind raced through every simulation she'd ever played in flight games, every YouTube video she'd ever watched about flying. I can do this, I have to. I must. And then she saw them. Outside the cockpit windows, slicing through the cloud layer with perfect precision, two F-22 Raptors appeared. Their sleek, metallic bodies glinted in the sunlight, engines humming a silent, menacing tune. They flanked Flight 14A like guardian angels, yet their presence only deepened the surreal nature of the moment. The metallic voice came again, calm, commanding, "Follow, trust. You are not alone, 14A." Maya's eyes widened, her stomach churned. Fighter jets, here, in the middle of civilian airspace. Her brain struggled to reconcile reality with what she was seeing, but there was no time to question it. The plane dipped dangerously as a gust of wind caught it, the engines groaning under the strain. Somewhere deep inside, a part of her, maybe the part that always imagined herself heroic, flickered to life. She realized that in this moment she had no choice. Panic would kill them. Hesitation would kill them. Action, guided, precise, and terrifying, was their only hope. Her fingers brushed the yoke. Her pulse raced. Sweat dripped down her temples. She drew a shaky breath. The cabin was a chaotic storm of fear and despair, but outside, the two F-22s held steady, unwavering. And in the eerie, almost sacred space between terror and hope, Maya whispered to herself, "I can do this. I have to." Then the plane shuddered violently, as if sensing her hesitation, and the echoing voice returned one final time before the descent into chaos. 14A, prepare. Follow the formation. You will survive. Maya's heart froze. Prepare. Formation. Survive. She had no idea what any of that meant, and yet she knew instinctively that her life and the lives of everyone on Flight 14A now depended entirely on her next move. And as the plane lurched again, dropping slightly in altitude, passengers screamed, drinks spilled, and oxygen masks dangled from the ceiling, Maya realized the unthinkable. She was no longer just a passenger. She was the pilot. The one chance between life and death. And the sky, vast, unforgiving, and merciless, was watching. Maya's hands trembled as she gripped the yoke, knuckles white, heart hammering in her chest. She had never flown a real plane before, let alone a commercial airliner teetering between stability and catastrophe. The hum of the engines felt deafening now, each vibration running straight through her bones. Behind her, passengers screamed, some crying, some praying, some frozen in disbelief. The reality of the situation was suffocating. Both pilots were unconscious, and she, the terrified passenger in seat 14A, was their only hope. The cockpit instruments flashed warnings in a symphony of red and orange lights. Altitude indicators swung wildly. Engine temperature gauges spiked. The plane shuddered as a sudden gust of wind rattled the fuselage. Maya's mind screamed, "Do something. Do anything." Yet the controls were foreign, alien. Buttons she didn't recognize glowed ominously. She had seen flight simulators on her laptop, yes, but nothing could have prepared her for the physical, gut-wrenching reality of a massive plane in free air. And then, almost impossibly, she heard it again, the calm, metallic voice. 14A, maintain attitude. F-22s are in formation. Follow. Outside the cockpit, through the cloud-smeared windows, two F-22 Raptors gleamed like sentinels of a war she had never imagined. They moved with uncanny precision, flanking the airliner, their sleek bodies slicing the sky in perfect synchronization. Their presence was mesmerizing and terrifying all at once. Maya's disbelief clashed with the instinctual trust that surged through her veins. The voice had never led her wrong, yet she had no rational explanation for what she was seeing. The turbulence intensified. The plane pitched and rolled violently, tossing overhead bins open and spilling luggage into the aisles. A woman screamed as her coffee spilled across her lap. Maya's stomach lurched. She tried to steady the plane, mimicking the movements she had once seen in a flight simulator, but every input felt wrong, every adjustment minute, every decision potentially fatal. One of the F-22s banked sharply, almost imperceptibly, signaling a course change. Maya's mind raced. Was it a hint? A warning? Without thinking, she mirrored the motion, turning the yoke slowly, trying to match its subtle trajectory. The plane responded, however imperfectly, stabilizing slightly. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but for the first time since boarding, a flicker of hope sparked. Passengers were panicked, some yelling at her, others trying to reach the cockpit. Flight attendants were attempting to calm them, but even they were visibly shaken. Maya glanced back at the cabin, a mosaic of fear, desperation, and raw human vulnerability. A young boy clutched his stuffed rabbit, his wide eyes mirroring her own terror. A man muttered a prayer under his breath, lips moving rapidly. Maya swallowed hard, feeling the crushing weight of responsibility. Every life on board now depended on her, on a complete stranger with zero training. The plane jolted again, throwing her forward slightly. Maya's hands shook as she adjusted the throttle. Another warning light blared, the left engine was faltering. Smoke began curling into the cockpit, acrid and suffocating. Maya coughed, panic threatening to paralyze her. The voice returned, calm, resolute. Left engine compromised. Reduce speed. Descend 200 feet. Keep steady. Her stomach dropped. Descend. At this altitude, the turbulence was merciless. Clouds whipped past at terrifying speed, obscuring vision. Every instinct screamed, "Don't move." Yet the F-22s held steady, their formation unwavering. Following them was terrifying but strangely comforting. There was logic here, a rhythm she could grasp, if only she trusted it. Maya's hands flew over switches she didn't understand, flipping buttons, pulling levers, mimicking movements she had only seen in simulations. She felt sweat sting her eyes, her body trembling uncontrollably. Behind her, a passenger screamed, "We're going to die, someone do something." Maya's heart broke, not just for herself, but for every terrified human trapped in this metal tube hurtling through the sky. "I can't fail them. I won't fail them." Suddenly, the lead F-22 banked sharply, almost imperceptibly signaling a change in altitude and direction. Maya followed instinctively. The plane responded, albeit roughly. She felt a flicker of control, a shard of confidence piercing through the fear. The metal voice returned, softer now, almost human in its tone. "Good, keep following. Focus. You are capable, 14A." Her mind reeled. Capable. She barely knew how to breathe without panicking. And yet, each subtle maneuver of the F-22s gave her guidance, a roadmap through chaos. She realized then that she was learning in real time, that the impossible was slowly bending to necessity. The cabin lurched violently again, sending luggage tumbling, passengers screaming, and oxygen masks dangling in a chaotic dance. Maya's stomach flipped. A teenage girl behind her clutched her phone, recording the terror, whispering, "This is insane, no one survives this." Maya forced herself to ignore the voice of doubt, focusing solely on the glinting F-22s outside. They were her lifeline, her invisible co-pilots, her guides through a storm that should have been fatal. And then it came, the first sign that the danger wasn't just turbulence. A shadow fell across the clouds, moving impossibly fast. A massive, unseen force seemed to be converging toward Flight 14A, a gust of wind so violent it rattled the fuselage violently. Maya's heart leapt into her throat. She could see the subtle shift in the F-22's formation, their precise adjustments, a warning she barely comprehended. The voice spoke again, urgent this time. "Brace for turbulence. Maintain formation. You must survive." The word must sent shivers down her spine. Survival was no longer optional, it was imperative. Her hands were white-knuckled on the yoke, her breathing shallow and fast. The plane rocked violently, throwing drinks, luggage, and terror into every corner of the cabin. She felt like she was balancing on the edge of a cliff, one wrong move away from catastrophe. Passengers screamed, some slamming their heads against the ceiling in panic, some clutching each other for comfort. Maya caught sight of a middle-aged man muttering, "God help us," his hands trembling. A mother tried to soothe her child, whispering promises she herself didn't believe. Every second stretched into eternity, the chaos amplified by the deafening roar of the engines and the terrifying, unnatural calm of the F-22s outside. And yet somehow, amid the pandemonium, a fragile thread of hope persisted. The F-22s were guiding her. The voice was instructing her. She wasn't alone. And for the first time, she realized the impossible. She might just survive this. But the shadow on the clouds loomed closer, and Maya's stomach sank as she realized that even the F-22s, precise and lethal as they were, couldn't guarantee safety. Something immense, something unknown was coming toward them, and she had no idea what it was, or if they could outrun it. Her fingers tightened on the yoke, her lips pressed into a thin line, and in that suspended moment between terror and determination, she whispered to herself, "I will not die today. I can do this. I have to." The plane shuddered violently again, the unknown force approaching faster. And as the cabin erupted into another wave of screams, Maya realized the grim truth. Survival wasn't just about following instructions. Survival meant confronting the impossible head-on, guided only by her courage, her instincts, and the mysterious, silent guardians outside. The voice returned calm, unwavering. 14A, trust the formation. Your life depends on it. Maya's heart leapt into her throat. Trust. That was all she had, trust, and a growing, fragile resolve that she might somehow miraculously make it through the storm. The plane shuddered again, violently, as if the sky itself were trying to tear it apart. Maya's hands shook on the yoke, but she refused to let go. Every instinct screamed for her to panic, to collapse under the weight of impossibility, but something deeper, a hidden reserve she had never known existed, kept her gripping the controls. Sweat ran in rivulets down her face, stinging her eyes. She blinked rapidly, trying to focus, trying to separate reality from fear. The F-22s were still there, slicing through the clouds with lethal precision. Their metallic bodies glinted in the sunlight like phantoms, almost impossibly fast, almost alive. Each subtle adjustment, each tilt and dive was a silent instruction guiding her through chaos. Maya had no idea what was outside, no way to gauge distance, speed, or trajectory. But the jet's presence was a strange comfort. She followed instinctively, letting their movements dictate hers. The cabin was chaos incarnate. Oxygen masks dangled uselessly, passengers screamed, a toddler cried uncontrollably, and luggage tumbled down the aisles. Flight attendants struggled to calm people, but their professional composure was fraying at the edges. Maya stole glances at the monitors in front of her. Altitude was dropping dangerously. Airspeed fluctuated wildly. Engine temperatures soared. Warning lights flashed like a Christmas tree gone mad. She tried to recall everything she had ever seen about planes, manuals, simulations, documentaries. But it wasn't enough. Nothing could have prepared her for this. Then came the gust. It hit without warning, a wall of wind that made the plane lurch violently to the right. Maya screamed involuntarily, her hands slamming against the yoke as she fought to stabilize the plane. Outside, clouds roiled like stormy oceans, black and suffocating, obscuring the F-22s from view. Panic clawed at her throat. For a terrifying moment, she couldn't see the jets at all. And then, faint but unmistakable, came the echoing voice. 14A, follow the formation. Trust it. Do not deviate. Maya's chest heaved. Trust. That word, repeated over and over in her mind, became a lifeline. She forced herself to remember it, repeating it silently like a mantra. The F-22s reappeared, cutting through the clouds like twin beacons. Their guidance was precise, almost telepathic, anticipating every tilt, every gust, every sudden drop. Following them felt less like a choice and more like surrendering to some invisible force. The plane lurched again. This time, the turbulence was accompanied by a low, rumbling vibration that resonated through the cabin. Maya's stomach twisted violently. She glimpsed the horizon through a break in the clouds and froze. Jagged mountain peaks loomed below, impossibly close. The ground was rising toward them at alarming speed. Her fingers froze on the controls, heart hammering. The plane was dropping fast, and she had no experience navigating in such conditions. Panic surged, but before it could consume her, the voice returned, firm and unyielding. Adjust pitch, descend slowly, left wing 5 degrees now. Maya swallowed hard. Her hands moved almost on their own, twisting and tilting, trying to mimic the instructions. The plane responded, groaning and shuddering but holding its trajectory. Behind her, the passengers were screaming louder now, some banging their fists against seats, others crying out in despair. She stole a glance at the co-pilot's slumped body, then back to the instruments. There was no time for grief, no time for disbelief. Shadow came next. Maya had noticed it before, a dark mass moving unnaturally fast through the clouds. Now it was closer, enormous, undulating in ways that defied physics. The F-22s reacted instantly, tilting, banking, adjusting speed. Maya mimicked every subtle movement, though the controls felt sluggish in her inexperienced hands. Her stomach twisted with fear. She didn't know what the shadow was, storm, aircraft, something else entirely, but its presence radiated menace. It was alive. She could feel it in her bones. A passenger screamed behind her. "What is that? What is it?" Maya could only shake her head. She didn't know either. All she knew was the formation, the voice, the jets guiding her. Without them, she was nothing more than a doomed passenger. Smoke began curling in from the left engine. A harsh, acrid scent filled the cockpit, making her eyes water. The warning lights blared incessantly, the alarms deafening. Panic threatened to engulf her, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, deliberately, focusing on the jets outside, letting them lead her. Every fiber of her being was concentrated on one thing: survival. 14A, focus on the formation. You are capable. Prepare for sudden maneuver. Maya's throat went dry. Sudden maneuver. The F-22s banked sharply, the plane following almost by instinct, rolling violently, sending passengers screaming again. Drinks flew, a laptop tumbled into the aisle, and the toddler cried louder. Maya gritted her teeth, refusing to let fear paralyze her. She was learning, reacting in real time, guided by invisible hands and mechanical guardians. Every movement was instinct, courage forged from necessity. The ground loomed ever closer. The mountains were massive, snow-capped peaks threatening to slice through the fuselage at any second. The cabin lurched violently as the wind funneled through the valleys. Maya's stomach twisted violently, bile rising. "We're going to die," she thought fleetingly. But the voice returned, calm and unyielding, and her heart seized on its words. 14A, you will survive. Trust the formation. Adjust rudder slightly right. Maintain control. She obeyed, hands moving with precision she didn't know she possessed. The plane responded, shuddering but holding. Her pulse hammered in her ears, sweat slicking her palms, fear twisting her stomach into knots, yet hope surged alongside it. She was flying, really flying. Not safely, not expertly, but alive, moving forward, surviving against odds that should have been impossible. The shadow loomed even closer now, a massive, dark presence brushing against the edges of the clouds. The F-22s moved faster, almost daring it to collide with them. Maya followed, her hands a blur over the controls, heart hammering, muscles trembling. The cabin was a storm of fear and noise, but outside the jets carved a path of survival through chaos. And then, just as the shadow seemed about to engulf them, the voice spoke one last time, low, commanding, almost human in its intensity. "Brace for turbulence. 14A, your life depends on precision. Trust the formation." Maya's stomach dropped. She swallowed hard, sweat blinding her, fear clawing at her throat. She realized the truth. Survival was no longer just about skill, about instinct, or about courage. Survival now depended on faith, faith in something she didn't understand, something outside herself, something guiding her toward an impossible chance of life. She inhaled, eyes fixed on the F-22s slicing through the storm. And in that moment, as the plane shuddered violently and the shadow loomed closer than ever, Maya understood the terrifying reality. She had become more than a passenger. She was the pilot, the guardian of everyone aboard, and the only one standing between life and utter catastrophe. And yet the question lingered, piercing her mind with icy curiosity. What was the shadow? And would following the F-22s be enough to survive it? The plane groaned under the stress, metal protesting with every gust. Maya's knuckles were raw on the yoke, sweat pouring down her face as she fought to keep Flight 14A from spiraling into chaos. Outside, the clouds churned like a storm-tossed sea, gray and suffocating, hiding the horizon. The jagged mountains loomed closer, threatening to tear the fuselage apart if she misjudged a single angle. The cabin behind her was pandemonium incarnate. Passengers screamed, children cried, and luggage tumbled freely down the aisles. Maya forced herself to focus on what mattered, the F-22s outside. They moved with supernatural precision, banking, diving, and swooping in ways that seemed almost impossible. They were guiding her, protecting her, yet there was a new sense of urgency in their movements. One of the jets banked sharply, almost violently, signaling a rapid course correction. Maya reacted instantly, twisting the yoke with trembling hands, the plane shuddering violently in response. The shadow was closer now. Its massive presence was unmistakable, even through the thick cloud cover. It moved with an unnatural grace, cutting through the air as if the atmosphere itself obeyed it. Maya felt a shiver crawl down her spine. Whatever it wasn't just weather or turbulence. It was something alive, something that could crush them all in an instant. A sharp alarm blared from the cockpit, making Maya jump. The left engine was failing. Smoke snaked into the cabin, acrid and suffocating. Panic surged through her chest. I can't control this," she thought fleetingly. But the calm, metallic voice returned, steady and unwavering. 14A, reduce speed. Stabilize. F-22s are your guide, trust them. Maya obeyed instinctively, her hands moving almost on autopilot. The plane lurched again, violently, throwing her forward. A young woman in the seat across the aisle screamed, clinging to her armrest. Maya swallowed hard, forcing herself to focus, shutting out the chaos behind her. She could not think of the screaming passengers, the crying children, the smoke, the fear. She could only think of the plane, the formation, and the impossible task of surviving. The F-22s sliced through the clouds, almost dancing, their precise movements dictating hers. Maya followed their lead, adjusting the pitch, banking the wings, descending carefully, inching away from the jagged peaks below. She had no idea how fast they were descending or how close the ground was, only that every second counted. Every miscalculation would mean death. Suddenly, the shadow loomed directly ahead, massive, almost palpable, its edges twisting unnaturally. Maya's stomach plummeted. The F-22s veered sharply, one of them passing dangerously close to her wing, creating a chaotic turbulence that nearly threw the plane into a violent spin. Maya gritted her teeth and mirrored the movement as best she could, trembling violently. The shadow was almost upon them, its form still hidden in the clouds, yet she could feel its pressure, the way it displaced the air around them, as if the sky itself feared it. 14A, brace for turbulence, adjust rudder right, descend 300 feet, you can do this. Maya's hands shook, tears blurring her vision. The voice was the only thing keeping her grounded, the only thing she could cling to in the storm. Her instincts screamed for her to panic, to let go, to surrender, but she refused. She couldn't. Not now. Not when every life in the cabin, every soul on the plane depended on her. The turbulence intensified. The plane rolled violently, throwing passengers and luggage like ragdolls. Oxygen masks dangled uselessly, and the acrid smoke from the failing engine thickened. Maya fought for breath, forcing her mind to focus on the instructions, on the movements of the F-22s, on the subtle shifts of the aircraft. Each maneuver was a battle between fear and control. Each second was a war against gravity, turbulence, and the unknown force closing in. Through the chaos, she stole a glance outside. The F-22s flanked her, almost protective, slicing through the storm with unnerving precision. And then she saw it, a glimpse of the shadow, fleeting, massive, darker than the clouds around it. Its edges seemed to ripple unnaturally, like a living storm, vast and impossible. Maya's stomach twisted violently. What was it? What kind of force could move with such speed, such precision, and yet be invisible until it chose to reveal itself? The voice returned, calm, resolute. 14A, focus. You are capable. Adjust left wing 10 degrees. Follow the formation. Survive. Maya's fingers clenched the yoke. Her entire body trembled, but she obeyed. The plane responded, groaning, shuddering, but holding steady. The F-22s reacted instantly, shielding the plane from the full force of the unseen threat. Maya realized with a mixture of fear and awe that the jets weren't just guiding her, they were protecting her, carrying her, keeping death at bay. The cabin was chaos. A man behind her vomited, another shouted prayers into the air, and a woman whispered frantic pleas to her children. Maya ignored them all. Her entire world had narrowed to the yoke in her hands, the F-22s outside, and the shadow closing in. Her mind raced through every instruction, every instinct she had ever known. Every nerve screamed terror, but a strange, steady calm began to form alongside it. An instinctual knowledge that she could survive if she did exactly what she was told. The shadow moved faster, its presence undeniable now, a massive force pressing down through the clouds. The plane pitched violently, throwing Maya against the controls. A flight attendant screamed as a luggage cart toppled nearby. Maya gritted her teeth, forcing her trembling body to move with precision, twisting, tilting, adjusting with every fiber of her being. The F-22s flanked her, perfectly synchronized, cutting through the storm like angels made of steel. Then a flash, a sudden crack of lightning illuminated the shadow fully for a heartbeat. Maya gasped. It was enormous, blacker than the night sky, with edges that seemed to ripple, almost liquid in motion. Her stomach twisted violently. This is not natural. Every rational thought screamed that survival was impossible, and yet the metallic, calm voice returned. 14A, descend. Maintain formation. You can survive this. Maya's hands moved as if by instinct. She forced herself to descend, following the F-22's lead. The plane shuddered violently, smoke curling from the left engine, alarms blaring. The shadow seemed to surge closer, twisting and writhing, its presence almost tactile in the turbulent air. Passengers screamed again, terror echoing off the walls. Maya clenched her jaw. She could not fail them. She would not fail them. And then, just as the shadow appeared ready to engulf them, one of the F-22s veered sharply, forcing the plane into a sudden, dangerous maneuver. Maya's stomach lurched. The aircraft tilted, cabin lights flickering, luggage and passengers thrown violently. She gritted her teeth, forcing herself to follow the jets with every ounce of strength she had left. The shadow passed, leaving the plane battered but intact. For a fleeting moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Maya's heart pounded, her body trembling uncontrollably. The passengers were silent, stunned, disbelief painted across every face. The voice returned, soft now, almost tender. 14A, you are learning. Keep focus, keep control. Survival is within reach. Maya exhaled shakily, tears stinging her eyes. The shadow had passed for now, but the threat remained and the mountains below were unforgiving. She knew this was only the beginning. And as the plane shuddered again, climbing through the storm with the F-22s guiding it, she realized one terrifying truth. Survival was possible, but it would demand everything she had. Every instinct, every ounce of courage, every beat of her heart. And then, from the back of the cabin, came a scream that froze her blood. Look, something moving outside. Maya's stomach dropped as she stole a glance at the cloud-filled windows. The shadow was not gone. It was moving faster, closer, almost aware. The storm raged on, and 14A, with a terrified passenger at the controls, was still in its grip. Maya Collins' hands ached, her knuckles white as they gripped the yoke. Her heart was a drumbeat in her chest, each thump echoing the terror and determination that surged through her body. Flight 14A shuddered violently, pitching and rolling as the storm outside pressed down on them with relentless fury. The shadow had not disappeared. It was moving faster now, closer, as if hunting them. Its presence was overwhelming, an invisible weight that pressed against the fuselage and rattled the nerves of everyone aboard. The F-22s were relentless, slicing through the turbulent clouds, their metallic bodies gleaming like predators in the storm. They flanked Flight 14A, banking, tilting, almost dancing around the passenger plane with a precision that defied reason. Maya followed them instinctively, every movement an exercise in survival. Each tilt of the yoke, each adjustment of the throttle was dictated by the formation outside, a living guide she didn't fully understand but had learned to trust. The cabin was chaos incarnate. Oxygen masks dangled uselessly, passengers clutched seats, praying, screaming, crying. A man's prayer was broken mid-sentence by the shriek of turbulence tossing luggage into the aisle. Maya's stomach knotted as she watched, but she forced herself to focus, shutting out every sound except the roar of the engines and the metallic, calm voice that now seemed almost human. 14A, maintain course. The shadow is testing you. Focus. Follow the formation. Her stomach lurched violently, testing her. The thought barely registered before another violent jolt threw the plane to the left. She gritted her teeth and mirrored the movement of the F-22s outside. The plane responded, groaning, shuddering, but holding. Smoke began curling from the left engine, thick and suffocating. The acrid smell burned her nose and made her eyes water. Another alarm screamed in her ears, a high-pitched, nerve-jangling sound she couldn't block. Maya's mind raced. This can't be real. It's impossible. I'm not a pilot. But there was no time for denial. She couldn't think about that. She had to react. She had to survive. And every second she hesitated was a second closer to disaster. The shadow moved faster, its massive form now partially visible through the swirling clouds. It was enormous, darker than the storm around it, edges rippling unnaturally, almost liquid in motion. Maya's stomach twisted violently. It wasn't just turbulence, it wasn't just wind. It was intelligent, aware, and it seemed to anticipate every movement of the plane. Suddenly the plane lurched violently downward. Maya's stomach dropped. She shouted, trying to steady the yoke, but the tilt was too strong, throwing her forward. The cabin erupted into screams, passengers clutching seats, some sobbing, some frozen in disbelief. A child cried out for his mother, a woman screamed in terror. Maya's throat went dry, sweat pouring down her face. The metallic voice came again, calm but urgent. 14A, correct immediately. Rudder 5 degrees right. Ascend 20 feet. Follow the lead jet. Maya obeyed instinctively. Her hands moved with precision she didn't know she had. The plane shuddered but responded. The F-22s adjusted their formation, almost shielding Flight 14A from the full force of the shadow. For the first time, Maya felt a glimmer of hope, a fragile thread in the chaos. She could survive this. She had to. But the shadow was relentless. Another wave of turbulence hit, stronger than anything before. Flight 14A pitched violently and the left engine sputtered dangerously, smoke curling into the cockpit. The alarms blared incessantly, deafening, unrelenting. Maya's mind screamed, I can't do this. I can't control it. Yet she forced herself to focus, following every subtle movement of the F-22s outside. Through the windows, the jets glinted like guardians, cutting through the storm with precise, almost supernatural grace. The shadow twisted closer, edges flaring, a palpable presence pressing against the plane like a predator closing in on its prey. Maya's stomach churned. She realized that survival wasn't just about skill. It was about trust. Trust in the formation, trust in the voice, trust in herself. She forced herself to breathe, hands shaking violently. The cabin was a cacophony of fear. A man screamed, clutching his head, a woman sobbed silently, and a toddler whimpered in terror. Maya's mind was singularly focused. Keep following, don't panic. Live. The voice returned, soft but commanding. 14A, brace for maneuver. You must survive, descend slowly, maintain alignment. The plane lurched again, violently, the turbulence nearly throwing Maya off balance. She pressed her forehead to the yoke for a split second, closing her eyes. And then she opened them, took a deep breath, and moved with intention, twisting the controls, tilting, adjusting, following the jet's invisible signals. The plane responded, shuddering but holding steady. The shadow surged closer, immense, dark, almost tangible. Maya could feel it pressing against the fuselage. Panic threatened to engulf her, but she fought it, forcing her mind to obey. The F-22s moved like phantoms, creating a path through the storm. One veered sharply, signaling a rapid adjustment. Maya followed. The plane tilted violently, cabin lights flickering, luggage flying, passengers screaming. But she stayed with the formation, every movement dictated by instinct and trust. The shadow roared in the clouds, a soundless, terrifying presence that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. It was closer now, a massive force, almost aware, testing her courage, her skill, her resolve. Maya's stomach twisted, bile rising. This is it. We're going to die. But then through the chaos, the metallic voice echoed. 14A, focus. You are capable. You will survive. Trust the formation. Maya's hands moved with a precision she didn't know she had. She twisted, tilted, adjusted, following the jets, feeling a strange rhythm emerge from the chaos. The F-22s flanked the plane, shielding it, carving a path of survival. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to hope. She could survive this. But as the plane leveled briefly, a new horror revealed itself. Lightning cracked through the clouds, illuminating the shadow fully. It was enormous, twisting, edges rippling unnaturally, almost alive. Its size and speed were impossible. Maya's stomach lurched violently. She realized the terrifying truth. This wasn't just turbulence, this wasn't just weather. It was something alive, something intelligent, something that could destroy them all in an instant. The cabin erupted again as the plane lurched violently. Maya gritted her teeth, forcing herself to obey every subtle signal of the jets. Her hands ached, her body trembled, but she stayed with the formation. She had no choice. Survival depended entirely on trust, precision, and courage she didn't know she possessed. And then, for a heartbeat, the shadow paused, hovering just outside the cloud cover, almost observing. The metallic voice returned, calm, resolute, almost human. 14A, you have the skill. Continue. Prepare for the next phase. Survival is within reach. Maya's chest heaved. Sweat blurred her vision. The shadow loomed closer. The F-22s sliced through the storm like guardians of the impossible. And in that frozen moment, she realized one terrifying truth. They were not out of danger. The storm, the shadow, and the failing plane were still very real, and the worst was yet to come. And from the back of the cabin, a terrified whisper reached her ears. Maya, it's coming closer. It's going to hit us. Her stomach dropped. She swallowed hard, gripping the yoke like a lifeline. The shadow was near, the plane faltering, and Flight 14A's survival hung by a thread. The storm had grown into a living monster, howling around Flight 14A, rattling the fuselage and shaking Maya Collins to her core. Her hands ached, sweat poured down her face, and her knuckles were raw from gripping the yoke. Every nerve in her body screamed exhaustion, fear, and adrenaline, yet she forced herself to focus. The shadow loomed closer now, enormous, dark, and impossible, twisting like liquid through the clouds. It moved with intelligence, with purpose, as if it were testing her, learning her limits. The cabin behind her was chaos incarnate. Passengers clung to seats, screaming, praying, crying. Oxygen masks dangled uselessly, swinging with the violent turbulence. Luggage had become deadly projectiles, and the acrid smoke from the left engine thickened, stinging noses and burning eyes. The F-22s flanked the plane relentlessly, weaving in and out of the storm, their sleek, metallic bodies glinting even through the thick cloud cover. Maya had come to rely on them instinctively. They were her guides, her guardians, her lifeline. Without them, she knew she would fail. Then came the metallic voice again, calm but urgent. 14A, brace for maximum turbulence. Descend 500 feet. Maintain alignment with formation. You will survive. Maya's stomach lurched. Maximum turbulence. She had already survived the impossible. How could this get worse? But there was no time for hesitation. She adjusted the yoke, her hands moving almost automatically, twisting and turning with every subtle motion of the F-22s outside. The plane responded, shuddering, groaning, but holding steady. The shadow surged forward. Maya could see it more clearly now, an enormous, twisting presence darker than night, edges rippling unnaturally. It moved like a predator closing in on prey, intelligent and aware. The F-22s reacted instantly, banking sharply, creating a protective path for Flight 14A. Maya followed, her stomach churning violently, sweat stinging her eyes. She was flying the impossible, surviving the unthinkable, and yet the shadow pressed closer with relentless force. The left engine groaned, sputtering dangerously. Smoke poured into the cockpit, making it hard to breathe. The warning alarm screamed incessantly, deafening her. The cabin lurched violently, tossing passengers and luggage like rag dolls. Maya's heart hammered, but she forced herself to focus, to breathe, to follow the formation. Every second counted. Every movement mattered. 14A, adjust throttle, descend cautiously, keep formation tight. Survival depends on precision. Her hands moved with fierce determination, following every instruction, every subtle signal from the F-22s. The plane responded, holding, wobbling, groaning, but alive. Maya felt a flicker of hope amid the chaos, a fragile thread that she clung to with every fiber of her being. She could survive this. She had to. The shadow twisted closer, and suddenly a wave of turbulence slammed into the plane like a battering ram. Flight 14A lurched violently, the left wing dipping dangerously close to the mountains below. Maya's stomach flipped violently. She shouted, almost incoherent, trying to correct the tilt, following the movements of the jets outside. The cabin erupted in screams, passengers gripping seats, praying, crying, some frozen in disbelief. The metallic voice returned, calm and commanding. 14A, adjust rudder right. Descend 200 feet, trust the formation. You can do this. Maya obeyed instinctively. The plane groaned under the strain, shuddering violently, but it held. The F-22s flanked the airliner, creating a protective corridor, shielding it from the worst of the shadow's force. Maya's heart raced. She realized something terrifying. Without the jets, they would already be lost. They were her only hope, her unseen guardians in the storm. The shadow surged again, twisting in the clouds, edges flaring like dark fire. It moved faster now, almost aware of her every movement. Maya felt her body tremble, fear threatening to consume her. The cabin was a symphony of chaos, screams, sobs, the clanging of luggage, and the acrid smoke filling every corner. She could not let herself panic. She had to survive. She had to guide the plane. Then came the flash. Lightning tore through the clouds, illuminating the shadow fully for a heartbeat. Maya gasped. It was enormous, almost impossible in size, its edges twisting and writhing like living smoke. The air around the plane seemed to vibrate, pressuring the fuselage, testing her skill, her courage, her resolve. 14A, brace for maneuver. You must survive. Follow lead jet precisely. The plane lurched violently as she followed the F-22's movements. She felt herself almost thrown from the controls, her body trembling uncontrollably. The left engine coughed, smoke curling into the cockpit, alarms blaring like a siren of impending doom. Maya's chest heaved. Every movement had to be perfect. Every second mattered. One mistake would mean disaster. Through the windows, she could see the F-22s slicing through the storm with uncanny precision. They moved like guardians, predators, angels, she didn't know what, but their presence gave her strength. She could survive this. She had to. She clenched the yoke, forcing herself to breathe, to move, to trust the formation. The shadow twisted closer still, its presence almost tangible, a predator stalking prey. Maya's heart pounded so hard it felt like it might explode. The cabin lurched again, throwing passengers into seats and luggage into the aisles. Maya forced herself to focus on the yoke, the throttle, the subtle cues from the F-22s outside. She couldn't look back. She couldn't lose hope. And then, just as the shadow seemed about to engulf them completely, The metallic voice returned, calm and unwavering. 14A, maximum turbulence passed. Maintain formation. You are capable, prepare for next phase. Survival is within reach. Maya's chest heaved, her body trembling uncontrollably. Sweat poured down her face, her muscles ached, but she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt since boarding the plane: control. She could survive this. She could guide Flight 14A through the storm. She could, somehow, defeat the impossible. But the shadow was not gone. It lingered, twisting in the clouds, watching, waiting. The F-22s flanked her, slicing through the storm, protective and precise. Maya realized one terrifying truth: the battle was far from over. They were still in danger, still at the mercy of forces she didn't understand. From the back of the cabin, a terrified whisper reached her ears. "Maya, it's still coming. It's going to hit us." Her stomach dropped. The shadow loomed closer. The left engine sputtered again, alarms blaring, turbulence still raging. Flight 14A was battered but alive, and Maya, the terrified passenger who had become its unlikely pilot, realized the most terrifying truth of all. Survival wasn't guaranteed, not yet. And as the plane lurched violently once more, she gritted her teeth and whispered to herself, "I will not let us die. I will survive. I have to." Sky had turned into a battlefield. Flight 14A groaned under the strain, the fuselage shuddering violently as the storm and the shadow pressed down with merciless force. Maya Collins' hands ached, sweat burned her eyes, and her knuckles were raw from gripping the yoke. Every nerve in her body screamed exhaustion, fear, and adrenaline, but she couldn't stop. She had to guide the plane. She had to survive. She had to protect the passengers who had become more than strangers. They were lifelines, lives she was now responsible for. The shadow surged closer, enormous, black, twisting unnaturally through the clouds. Its edges rippled like liquid fire, almost alive. It moved with intelligence, hunting, testing, probing. Maya's stomach twisted violently. The F-22s flanked her plane, weaving around it with impossible precision. They were no longer just guides, they were protectors, guardians in a battle she barely understood. Every tilt of the yoke, every adjustment of the throttle was dictated by their movements, the subtle cues she had learned to read like a second language. The cabin behind her was chaos. Oxygen masks swung wildly, passengers screamed, some praying, some sobbing, some frozen in disbelief. A luggage cart toppled, spilling hard objects into the aisle. Maya stole a glance at the co-pilot, still unconscious, then forced her eyes back to the instruments. She had no time for fear. She had no time for doubt. She could only follow the formation. Then the metallic voice returned, calm yet urgent. 14A, the shadow is initiating a direct strike. Maximum precision required. Follow formation. Descend 300 feet. Prepare for evasive maneuver. Maya's stomach lurched violently. Maximum precision, evasive maneuver. Her hands shook as she obeyed instinctively, twisting and tilting with the jets outside. The plane shuddered violently, groaning under the strain. The left engine sputtered again, smoke curling into the cockpit, acrid and suffocating. Alarms blared deafeningly. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to focus. Panic was a luxury she could not afford. The shadow moved faster now, closing in on Flight 14A with terrifying intent. Its form was enormous, dark, edges rippling like smoke, almost tangible in its force. Maya's pulse thundered in her ears. The F-22s reacted instantly, tilting, banking, weaving, creating a protective corridor, guiding her through the storm and the menace. She mirrored every subtle movement, her body trembling with effort, her mind laser-focused. The plane lurched violently, throwing passengers and luggage like rag dolls. Maya fought the controls, twisting, tilting, adjusting, every movement critical. She felt sweat pour down her face, her muscles screaming in exhaustion, but she refused to falter. Survival depended on precision, trust, and courage, and she had no choice but to summon all three. The metallic voice returned, almost a whisper now, yet sharper than steel. 14A, brace. Shadow strike imminent. Follow formation. Trust the F-22s. You are capable. Her chest heaved. She repeated the words in her mind like a mantra. I am capable. I will survive. I have to survive. The shadow surged and the turbulence hit like a battering ram. The plane pitched violently, almost tipping over. Maya's stomach dropped, bile rising, her hands trembling on the yoke. The cabin erupted in screams, passengers clutching seats, praying, crying. Then a blinding flash. Lightning tore through the clouds, illuminating the shadow in full. Maya gasped. It was enormous, wider than the plane itself, twisting and writhing with a terrifying intelligence. The air around Flight 14A vibrated, pressuring the fuselage, shaking every passenger with a force that felt almost alive. The F-22s reacted instantly, creating a defensive path, banking sharply, forcing Maya's plane into an evasive maneuver she barely understood but executed with instinct. The plane lurched violently. Cabin lights flickered. Luggage flew. Passengers screamed. Maya's chest heaved. Sweat and tears blurred her vision, but she stayed focused, twisting the yoke, adjusting the throttle, descending carefully, following every subtle movement of the jets outside. The F-22's presence was the only thing keeping Flight 14A alive. Then came the impossible. The shadow lunged, a massive wave of force that seemed to push against the plane itself. Flight 14A shuddered violently, groaning under the strain. Maya's stomach plummeted. She screamed, adjusting the rudder violently, twisting the yoke, following the F-22's precise movements. The plane responded, groaning and straining, but miraculously held. 14A, maintain alignment. Descend slowly. Maximum control required. You can survive this. Her hands shook uncontrollably. The plane shuddered again. Sweat poured into her eyes, blinding her momentarily. The shadow pressed closer, a massive, living force of nature, seemingly aware of every movement. Maya gritted her teeth, refusing to let fear overwhelm her. She could not fail. She would not fail. Every life on board depended on her. The cabin behind her was a cacophony of terror. Passengers screamed, children cried, adults prayed silently, some frozen in disbelief. Maya stole a glance at the young boy clutching his stuffed rabbit, eyes wide with fear. She felt a surge of protective determination unlike anything she had known. I will survive. I will protect them. The shadow twisted closer, faster, more intelligent, testing every limit. The F-22s banked sharply, almost daring it to strike. Maya followed, tilting and adjusting with all the precision she could muster. The plane shuddered violently. Smoke thickened from the failing engine. Alarms screamed. Sweat poured down her body. Yet somehow Flight 14A held together, riding the impossible wave of force through skill, instinct, and trust. And then, just as the shadow seemed about to engulf them completely, the voice returned, calm and unwavering. 14A, final maneuver, trust formation, precision only. Survival is in your hands. Maya's heart hammered. Her body shook violently. She had never felt more exhausted, more terrified, more alive. She gritted her teeth, gripped the yoke with every ounce of strength, and followed the F-22s with instinct and courage she didn't know she possessed. The plane responded, shuddering but obeying, navigating through turbulence, through shadow, through the storm. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the shadow fully. It was massive, twisting, writhing, almost alive in its intent to destroy. The F-22s flanked the plane, slicing through the storm like guardians, their movements almost a language of survival. Maya mirrored every subtle signal, every tilt, every adjustment. Sweat, fear, adrenaline, and determination fused into singular focus. Then came the first moment of clarity. The shadow faltered. It twisted, recoiled, as if surprised by the plane's evasive maneuvers, by the presence of the F-22s, by the courage of a terrified passenger who had become a pilot. Maya's chest heaved violently. Could they actually survive this? Could Flight 14A make it? The cabin was tense, frozen in fear, yet still alive. Passengers clutched seats, holding on for their lives. Maya's hands ached, her body trembled, but she pressed on, following the formation, executing the final, impossible maneuvers. The storm raged, the shadow lunged one last time, but the jets flanked her, slicing a path, shielding the plane from destruction. For a heartbeat, everything froze. The shadow twisted, rippled, and then retreated. The immediate threat passed, though the storm still raged. The left engine sputtered, and Flight 14A was battered, shaken, but alive. Maya exhaled shakily, heart pounding, tears stinging her eyes. She had survived the impossible. But even as relief began to flicker, one terrifying question remained. Was the shadow truly gone, or merely regrouping for another strike? Maya Collins' hands were raw, trembling from hours of white-knuckle control, sweat blinding her eyes as Flight 14A groaned under the lingering storm. The left engine coughed and sputtered, but it held, just barely. The shadow had retreated for now, yet the oppressive presence of the storm and the unknown force still pressed down on them. Every second was tense, every motion calculated. She had survived the impossible, but she knew instinctively. The fight wasn't over until the plane was safely on the ground. The F-22s remained close, slicing through the clouds like guardians, their metallic bodies glinting through breaks in the storm. Maya had come to rely on them instinctively. They were more than guides now, they were her partners in survival. Following their precise movements, she navigated the treacherous peaks and valleys of the mountains, descending cautiously, carefully managing the failing left engine. Each tilt, each adjustment, each throttle twist was a dance with death she had never imagined performing. Behind her, the cabin was exhausted silence. Passengers, pale and wide-eyed, clung to their seats, holding hands, whispering prayers, some trembling, some in silent shock. Maya stole a glance at the child clutching his stuffed rabbit, eyes locked on her. For the first time, she felt a fierce, protective surge, not just fear or adrenaline, but love. She would get them home. She had to. Every life on board depended on her courage. A flicker of lightning illuminated the shadow once more, far above, lurking in the storm clouds. Maya's stomach twisted violently. Its form was still massive, still alive in some incomprehensible way, but it was no longer lunging. It was observing, waiting, perhaps learning, perhaps testing. The metallic voice, calm yet authoritative, cut through the tension. 14A, maintain course. Descend to safe altitude. Follow the formation. You are capable. You will land safely. Maya nodded to herself, focusing on the yoke, throttles, and instruments. She followed the lead F-22 with meticulous precision, her body trembling, muscles screaming, but her mind razor-sharp. Flight 14A responded, shuddering but steady, finally leveling out at a safer altitude. The storm's fury was less intense here, though turbulence still rocked the plane. Maya's chest heaved, sweat blurring her vision, but she refused to let relief take over just yet. Below, a valley opened, a narrow, winding corridor between jagged peaks. The F-22s banked, signaling the route to safety. Maya followed, twisting and tilting, adjusting every micro-movement to match the jets. The valley walls loomed dangerously close, jagged and merciless, yet she maneuvered with almost preternatural focus, each decision critical. One wrong tilt, one miscalculation, and they would be destroyed. The left engine sputtered dangerously, but she coaxed it along with careful throttle management. The shadow appeared one last time, a dark ripple across the clouds, massive, incomprehensible, yet now distant. Its intent seemed clear. It had tested them, pushed them to the brink, and now, for reasons she could not fathom, it had relented. The metallic voice echoed once more. 14A, the threat has passed. Focus on descent. You are doing well, almost there. Maya swallowed hard, teeth gritted, refusing to let her fear or exhaustion paralyze her. The valley narrowed further, the mountains towering on each side. She descended carefully, following every micro-cue from the F-22s, every tilt, every adjustment. The plane groaned under the strain, but it held. She could almost hear the hum of survival in the engines, in the metallic scream of the fuselage, in the delicate balance she was maintaining. The runway finally appeared in the distance, like a sliver of hope piercing the storm. Maya's stomach flipped with both relief and tension. She had never flown a plane like this, never landed a plane like this, never imagined herself in this role. And yet, she was here, guiding Flight 14A towards survival against impossible odds. The F-22s flanked her, signaling alignment with the runway. Maya followed, adjusting carefully, descending gradually. Her hands shook violently, muscles trembling, heart pounding. She could feel every passenger's life resting in her grip. She couldn't fail. She wouldn't. The shadow remained distant, a dark ripple above the clouds, silent now. Maya realized with a shiver that it had never intended to destroy them entirely. It had pushed, it had tested, it had forced them to survive beyond what anyone thought possible. Somehow she understood it now. Survival wasn't just skill, it was courage, instinct, and the willingness to fight when every odds seemed stacked against you. Maya's fingers tightened on the yoke as the plane lined up with the runway. The valley walls loomed dangerously close, but she followed the F-22's lead perfectly. Her stomach dropped as the left engine sputtered one final warning, but the plane held. Sweat poured down her face, her muscles screamed, her heart thundered, but she guided Flight 14A carefully, precisely, inch by inch toward the runway. She felt a flicker of hope, then terror. The winds picked up, turbulence rocking the plane violently. Passengers screamed once more, clutching seats, crying. The runway seemed impossibly distant, the mountains unyielding. Maya's mind cleared, narrowing into singular focus. Survival, control, trust. She adjusted the throttle, twisted the yoke, followed every cue from the F-22s outside. The final moments were a blur. The plane shuddered, tilted, almost tipped, but Maya held. Inch by inch, Flight 14A descended. The runway grew larger, closer. She adjusted, twisted, leveled, and finally wheels touched asphalt. The landing was rough, trembling, almost violent, but it held. The plane slowed, groaning, smoke curling from the left engine, yet alive. A stunned silence filled the cabin. Passengers clutched seats, tears streaming, disbelief painted across every face. Maya exhaled shakily, body trembling, tears blurring her vision. She had done it. Against impossible odds, guided by invisible forces and the incredible F-22s, she had survived. She had landed Flight 14A, she had saved every life aboard. The metallic voice returned one last time, calm, almost human in tone. 14A, you have done well. You are capable. Survival is yours. Maya slumped forward, shaking, overcome with relief, fear, and exhaustion. She looked outside at the F-22s, still flanking the plane, and realized the enormity of what had happened. The shadow had vanished into the clouds, leaving only the storm behind. Flight 14A had survived. She had survived. From the back of the cabin, a passenger whispered, barely audible. She did it. She really did it. Maya exhaled deeply, letting herself finally feel the weight of the impossible. The plane was safe, the passengers alive, the shadow gone for now. She had faced the unthinkable, battled the impossible, and emerged victorious. She had become more than a passenger. She had become a pilot, a hero, and a survivor. And as the storm clouds parted, revealing a faint golden sunrise over the jagged peaks, Maya realized the truth. Survival wasn't about luck. It was about courage, instinct, trust, and the unwillingness to surrender when every odd screamed for failure. Flight 14A sat battered, trembling, but alive. And Maya Collins, the terrified passenger who had taken control when all hope seemed lost, had emerged as something more, something unstoppable.